Not yet, but I think when I hit broadcast, it should show up.
Okay.
Well, there they are. They're starting to come in. Good morning and good afternoon. I'm just going to give a minute for all of our attendees to come into the session. So just one moment, please, and we'll get started. Okay, well, good morning and good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast. Thank you for joining us today for the Ventura County Transportation Commission's pre-proposal conference focused on the request for proposals for an operator of rail service on the Santa Paula branch line. My name is Amanda Fagan, and I serve as the Director of Planning and Policy for the Ventura County Transportation Commission, or VCTC. VCTC is the countywide regional transportation planning agency responsible for planning, programming for local, state, and federal transportation funds, managing and providing transportation programs and services, and setting transportation priorities here in beautiful Ventura County, California. I will start today's session with a bit of housekeeping and then turn the floor over to our Executive Director, Darren Kettle, who will share an overview of the request for proposals, and also Tom Egan, who will help us to answer any questions. For today's remote pre-proposal session, we will be using it is recording, just one moment. For today's remote pre-proposal session, we will be using the Zoom webinar platform to share a PowerPoint presentation that provides information on the Santa Paula branch line and request for proposals, followed by a questions and answers session. The Zoom webinar allows attendees to ask questions using the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen. You may have to move your cursor to the bottom center of your screen to show the Q&A and chat box functions. You may submit questions at any time during the session using the Q&A tool. All questions will be answered during the dedicated questions and answers period. During the questions and answers session, you will also be able to raise your hand to be called on to ask questions verbally. You may also submit comments to the panelists using the chat box function, also located at the bottom of the screen. However, please refrain from sending any comments privately to any one panelist and only submit to all panelists for transparency purposes. Because this is a live webinar, please understand that we cannot control the audio or video quality on your device. As such, we recommend that participants disconnect any unnecessary devices to avoid interference with audio and video quality. Attendees may view the webinar in either gallery view or speaker view. The controls to change the view are located at the upper right of your screen. We highly recommend that you use speaker view to view today's webinar. Today's session is being recorded and will be available via the VCTC website to review. We expect the session to last approximately 1 to 1.5 hours, depending on the number of questions that we receive. To help us generate a sign-in sheet for today's session, I would really appreciate if you can use the chat box function to enter your name and who you are representing today. I would now like to introduce you to Darren Kettle, Executive Director of the Ventura County Transportation Commission, and Tom Egan, who is a railroad consultant that has been assisting VCTC with this request for proposals. Now, Darren, it's over to you.
Great, thank you, Amanda, and good morning and good afternoon to those of you that are attending our pre-proposal conference. Again, my name is Darren Kettle. I'm the Executive Director of the Ventura County Transportation Commission. And with us also providing professional expertise is a longtime railroader in Tom Egan. Tom has been serving as a consultant to VCTC and specifically on the Santa Paula branch line activities for a number of years. And is one of the primary authors of the request for proposals that is now under circulation by VCTC. I'm going to go through a relatively short PowerPoint to just sort of tee up some conversation points and potentially address maybe some of your questions in advance of them even being asked. And then once we're done with that, we'll make sure that we open this up to questions and answers. In some cases, when you may have questions that we are not able to answer in the moment, we will certainly make note of that, and you'll recall, if you've seen our timeline, that we do have a question period that allows proposers to submit questions, and then that we would provide answers at a later date. So bear with us on that if we are not able to answer your questions during this webinar. So bear with me now. I am going to attempt to share my screen with a PowerPoint presentation. So let's see if we can make this all work. All right. And I hope that that is up there before everybody. If I could get maybe Amanda or Tom to give me a thumbs up, that would be great. Super. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay, so this again, this is going to be a short presentation on the part of VCTC as it relates to the request for proposals to lease and operate the Santa Paula branch line. I'm going to give you a little history, where we are with the RFP, and a few other points, and then we'll go into questions and answers. So again, just a little bit of history and background. If you have, hopefully you've had a chance to look at the request for proposals and have had a chance to digest it, but in the high level conversation, VCTC purchased this slightly over 30-mile Santa Paula branch line corridor from the Southern Pacific Railroad in 1995. The stated purpose that the grant funds that we used, they were federal transportation funds that we used for the purchase of the line. The stated purpose was for the construction of recreational trails and the future connections of commuter rail between Ventura and the Santa Clarita Valley, which is in Los Angeles County and is a suburb of Los Angeles that is served by Metrolink, the commuter rail system in Southern California that serves the Santa Clarita Valley. So the idea was that somewhere down the road, commuter rail could connect between Ventura and Santa Clarita. In 2001, VCTC entered into a 20-year lease agreement with the Fillmore and Western Railway for various operating rights on the Santa Paula branch line. I won't go into a large number of details on that. The lease agreements are public documents and are available, and I believe in some cases were provided in some of the documentation that are attachments to this RFP. The Union Pacific Railroad currently serves one freight customer in the city of Santa Paula, which is about 9 or 10 miles or so away from the Coast Main Line, which is Union Pacific's primary line going up the Pacific coast of Southern California and serving up into the Central Coast. The level of freight service on that that UP provides is somewhere on the order of 3 to 4 cars, freight cars, delivered to this one customer every couple of weeks. The lease with the Fillmore and Western Railroad expires on June 30 of 2021. And the intent of the Commission's action and the release of this request for proposals is to identify a rail operator over the course of the next 7 months or so, 8 months or so, so that a operator is in place upon the expiration of that current 20-year lease with Fillmore and Western. In May of this year, the Commission, and I should say my commission, the Ventura County Transportation Commission, is a public agency. It consists of 15 elected officials, one from all 10 cities in Ventura County, as well as 5 county supervisors. That's 15, plus 2 public citizen appointees. So that is a grand total of 17 commissioners that I report to, that VCTC staff reports to. They gave, that commission gave, my commission gave direction to move forward with a real property process to further the use of the Santa Paula branch line. A few of the points that were highlighted by the Commission's action and direction to VCTC staff was that the RFP should include permitting all types of rail services included in the current lease. That generally covers the waterfront as it relates to the activities of the branch line. It includes filming activities, excursion trains, freight, mail services, and those are the primary activities, although I don't believe we carry a whole lot of US mail on the Santa Paula branch line right now. But we do have those other programs and activities. The lease term will be a length of 20 years to allow that a railroad operator to amortize investments made in the railroad infrastructure. And we would allow for 2 5-year options that could be exercised. The expense to maintain the operating railroad shall be the responsibility of the lessee. And one of the critical to the Commission was updating to more current standards insurance and indemnification language and payment and performance bonds of any tenant lessee on the line, as well as given VCTC's obligation to ensure that UP is able to continue to operate freight on that line, which is our obligation, that there would be a 1-year maintenance of right-of-way guarantee should the selected operator not be able to perform effectively, to serve as a performance bond or payment to make sure that maintenance can continue for the section that UP currently operates on. Attached with the RFP, and if you've, I believe all of you have seen the VCTC website and the direction to our contract section that identifies the RFP. Included with the RFP are a number of exhibits that will, I hope, we have done our able best, thanks to Tom Egan, to identify all of the things that are important to the railroad community that you would need to see to make sure that you're when you take interest in this, you know what the branch line looks like, even if it's only on paper. And I will get to the not on paper part in a little bit. But it does identify all of the different elements. I want to call your attention to 2 in particular. It is bullet point, let's see here, bullet point 3, condition report of the Santa Paula branch line. That is a document that VCTC contracted with Wilson and Company, our railroad engineer, civil engineering consultant to give a high-level condition report of the active railroad, including rail, ties, and ballast. I would encourage you to make sure that you have digested that report. And then the other bullet that I would call your attention to particularly is the third bullet from the bottom, the bridge inspection report. Again, that is a document, a report that's been produced by our consultant, Wilson and Company, that we have to do on an annual basis under the Federal Railroad Administration requirements to have our bridges inspected. And included in that report, it identifies the condition of bridges along the branch line and where the cost of related state of good repair and maintenance would be to ensure those bridges stay in safe working order. Here's the timeline. The timeline is also included in the request for proposals. We are here on October 28th right now at the pre-bid or pre-proposal conference. As we mentioned, we will take some questions here today, but we will compile all questions, and all questions from potential proposers are due November 4th. And we will have our responses posted to those questions by November 18th. Proposals are due to VCTC on December 18th of 2020, and I will not go through the rest of the list. You can see that. I am happy to make this PowerPoint available to all proposers so that you have sort of the Cliff's Notes version of the RFP, and so you have this just for reference purposes. Again, we hope that we would be able to approve a contract, a lease contract, operations contract at our commission meeting in April 2nd, and then have the effective date of the contract be July 1st of 2021. Selection factors, again, these are key factors that the commission has identified being critical in any selection that we make. I will go through these very, very briefly. We will, through your proposal, we want to see evidence of the financial capacity to fund the proposed operation and all the activities included in your technical plan. So you have a business operation, a business plan. We want to be certain that the financial backing is there to make sure that the plan can be delivered. We are asking for a history of managing and operating a similar type of operation, a successful operation, comparable size and complexity. That should be noted in your technical plan provisions. We want to know that the plan is viable. We want to know that it can be done. You can deliver on what is in your plan. To have knowledge of the relevant laws and regulations governing this type of operation. If you've run these kinds of operations in California or elsewhere in the country, you're going to be familiar with certainly FRA, but if you haven't run in California, having to be familiar with the California Public Utilities Commission and all the rules that govern railroads in California. We would like to see some evidence of knowledge of those laws and regulations. That's not to say that if you don't have a presence in California, that with expertise that you can't show that you have that on your team. That will be that will suffice. Clearly here again, history of working with the regulatory agencies, FRA and CPUC will be helpful. Exhibit a commitment to the environmental stewardship and that reflect the commitment to the proposer's technical plan. The nature of the Santa Paula branch line is, again, it's a 32-mile corridor. Much of that corridor goes through, it goes through a couple of cities. It goes through actually 3 cities and 1 small community. We go through the parts of the city of Ventura, the city of Santa Paula, and the city of Fillmore. Santa Paula and Fillmore are considered rural communities, old school, in many cases, old railroad towns for that matter. And the current operation that the excursion train operates out of is within the city of Fillmore. But also the bulk of the corridor and most of the miles go through unincorporated Ventura County, where there is active agricultural lands, cultivation activity that includes some amazing landscape of avocado trees, citrus, row crops, and I think there may even be an old packing house or two somewhere along the corridor. So to go back in time, there's that opportunity with this corridor to take us back 60, 70, 80 years ago. In these slides, I will bring to your attention that there is, I think, some places we have leases that are dated sometime in the 1880s or something thereabouts. So there's a long history with the Santa Paula branch line, as it was a main line for the Southern Pacific Railroad for the better part of a century, or at least half a century. Lastly, to address the style, and we need to make sure that there's an understanding of the communication between the proposer and VCTC and the communities and the public along the Santa Paula branch line. This is going to be a public-private partnership. VCTC owns this right away. We want to make it available to the industry to come in with some great ideas and ideally operate a very successful railroad operation through what is called the Santa Clara River Valley in Ventura County. So you've seen everything in black and white. Our RFP identifies a number of elements. Our technical documents, the exhibits, do provide a lot of information, but nothing is like actually going out and kicking the tires, as it were. And we understand that there may be interest in visiting the branch line. This graphic that is a little bit out of scale at this point, but the intent here is to show there is a lot going on in this 30+ mile stretch with a variety of crossings, some public, some private, a number of leases. Again, I mentioned cultivation or agricultural leases. We have utilities. We have on the Santa Paula branch line itself, the infrastructure, bridges, culverts, pedestrian crossings, private crossings. I don't know that you could cram any more into a 30-mile railroad corridor than what we have done with the Santa Paula branch line. We would encourage proposers to visit, see the Santa Clara River Valley, see the Santa Paula branch line, see the surrounding communities for yourselves, and get a better understanding of how Ventura County fits into the larger Southern California, Los Angeles Basin region, so you understand the market potential of this corridor. That said, the way you're best able to do that, we have, again, the proposals are due December 18. November is a gorgeous time of year in Ventura County, as long as the winds aren't blowing and the fires aren't in the hills. But I can assure you that if you're coming from someplace cooler, colder climate, you won't mind taking a few days visiting Ventura County in Southern California to see the branch line. So we would encourage you to come out and take a look. There are a number of public access points to the Santa Paula branch line, including public street crossings, pedestrian crossings, and in 3 of the communities, Santa Paula, Fillmore, and the unincorporated area of Piru, there are constructed rails to trails that are adjacent to the railroad corridor that you would be able to very easily access to see the line in person. If you're visiting, you must stay within the public right-of-way. As I don't need to speak to this community about the importance of safety with rail operations, but accessing the track itself beyond where the public crossing is at a street crossing or a public pedestrian crossing should not occur. We want to make sure that everybody is safe in this operating environment. So again, please do not access the active rail line. I will note that the current railroad operator is in Southern California, has received the green light from Ventura County's Public Health Department to have excursion train operations. And I believe if you were to go to the website of the Fillmore and Western, you would find opportunities to actually ride the rails yourselves if you would like to see it from the railroad perspective. I seem to recall in my very quick search that generally speaking, there are Saturday trains operated by the Fillmore and Western that you would be able to sign up for and pay for a ticket and be able to see the line. So that's my presentation. I am going to stop sharing my screen now. And I'm gonna, before I do that though, let me just very quickly ask Tom Egan if there was anything that I might have missed.
Oh, I think you gave a fair overview. We'll sit back and see what questions the bidders may have.
Very good. So I am stopping my sharing and I am going to, I think we are good to go there. I'm gonna, just for the purposes of trying to make things simple, and I don't do the best when it comes to juggling the various activities that relates to Zoom, which is why, one of the reasons why Amanda Fagan is here to help us to facilitate, excuse me, the question and answer period. So with that, Amanda, let me know what we have out there.
Great, thank you. Thank you to all of you, those of you who have noted in the Q&A box your name and who you're representing today. I do appreciate that. I know I talked about giving us your information in the chat box, and as I look at our Zoom setup, yet another change by Zoom that I wasn't expecting, and there is no chat box in today's session. So we do have access to the Q&A box, which you'll find at the bottom of your screen. For all of those of you who have signed in, I'm going to dismiss your questions so that we can get to the actual questions for today's session. So you can either ask questions in writing using the Q&A box, or you can raise your hand. If you go to the participant, if you click on the two little body icons at the bottom of your screen that says participants, that will bring up the ability to click on the raise hand, and then I can call on you to actually ask questions verbally. So you're welcome to ask any questions either using the Q&A box or to raise your hand, and I will give you permission within the session to talk. So our first question is, would the rights to real estate revenue be included in any transaction?
Okay, I want to make sure I understand the question. So currently, we have the various leases that are that we have, whether they may be cultivation leases, we have pipeline leases. Those revenues would remain with VCTC. The intent here is that we would be putting out to the interested parties, proposers, generally the operating railroad corridor 15 feet from center line of the track. The outer portion will remain VCTC property and at VCTC's discretion to lease and raise revenues. The reason for that is the 30-mile corridor does require a substantial amount of maintenance and upkeep, and those revenue streams are what pay for weed abatement, trash cleanup, tree trimming, and everything else. Under the approach we're taking with this, the railroad operator would only need to maintain 15 feet from center line of the track that they would be operating on. So, long answer to a short question, lease revenues will remain with VCTC.
Great, thank you. Please provide the trail project maps and trail project requirements and what responsibility the operator has and liability for the trail.
We will be able to provide that. That's a good question, and we'll make that available. That'll take some, not a lot of time, but some time to provide those maps. Those maps, we do keep them and we do have them. Those trails are outside that 15 feet from center line, and VCTC has agreements with the local community, the two cities and the county, where we have all of the liability and indemnification between VCTC and the local community. So there will not be a requirement on the part of a railroad operator to take on that exposure. But we will make those locations and maps available.
Will the operator then be able to charge private crossing maintenance fees since it is within the 15 feet lease?
The short answer, no. Those private crossings are long since negotiated with, in many cases, the farming community that have been there. In some cases, even before the railroad tracks were. So there will not be it cannot be charged.
See, we have answered all of the questions in the Q&A box. So again, I would remind participants that you can ask questions in writing using the Q&A box. And we have one more that just came in, or feel free to raise your hand and ask your question live as well. So the next question, how often has the excursion train run during normal operating times?
The Fillmore and Western was has been a regular operator. Obviously, these aren't normal times, so they're different situations, but oftentimes they would be occasional trips during the week, and then on weekends, Saturdays, Sundays, I believe on Fridays, there would be various types of excursion trains, some scenic, some dinner trains. There have been seasonal trains that occur. I think the current operations include a pumpkin patch train. So it just sort of does depend on the time of year and the seasons. There has also, around the holidays, there are various trains. And then last year, there was an arrangement for the Polar Express to participate with Fillmore and Western for a Polar Express experience through the licensed by MGM to allow for that operation. So that's the extent that excursion trains have operated.
Does VCTC have private road crossing agreements and indemnification for the operator of the rail line that is typical of railroad private crossing agreements for maintenance of the crossing, making the private crossing leaseholder responsible for the maintenance?
Every lease is going to be a little bit different. Every agreement is going to be a little bit different. We will have to do a little research, and we can get back to you with an answer to that question in a more solid form. Again, this line is more than 100 years in existence, and private crossing agreements that long predated even VCTC's purchase of it. Where we have new private crossing agreements, we are updating all language as it relates to maintenance and indemnification, but we will get a better answer to that question.
Will VCTC allow for the subleasing of rail facilities by the operator for other rail-related enterprises? This question is from the Museum of Handcar Technology, and they're looking to join up with a railroad operator that is submitting a proposal for the branch line.
Yes, in fact, arrangements that exist out there right now have had leases and subleases for the activity of the rail corridor. So we have a precedent for that. It's a slightly different precedent given the nature of the party who's asking the question. But we want to see, VCTC wants to see success on this corridor. And the more opportunities that are out there, the better chance of the variety of ideas to play out. So yes, most certainly that is a possibility.
Will the CPUC signal maintenance revenue received by VCTC be shared with the operator for signal maintenance on the new operator's segment?
That would be negotiable. Currently, there had been a structure where the revenues received by VCTC from PUC and Caltrans were a component of the fee paid to the current operator. That could very well be the case in the future, but again, that would be negotiable.
Who owns the depot in Fillmore?
So the current operation, the city of Fillmore is the owner of much of the property. There are portions of the right-of-way that are also owned by VCTC. The nature of the right-of-way, it's primarily 100 feet wide, almost the entire segment of the corridor, but there are places where it does expand out. We can provide parcel maps to identify the various properties. So in Fillmore, though, a portion is owned by VCTC, a portion is owned by the city of Fillmore currently, and it has been leased. The property from the city of Fillmore, in the city of Fillmore, owned by city of Fillmore, is currently leased to the Fillmore and Western Railway, the current operating railroad.
Would VCTC be open to a proposal committing the operator to assume additional responsibility for the other corridor maintenance and policing obligations you listed earlier?
I'm sorry, Amanda, could you repeat that question?
Sure. Would VCTC be open to a proposal committing the operator to assume additional responsibility for the other corridor maintenance and policing obligations you listed earlier? So I would presume the area outside of the operating right-of-way.
Yes, I think we would be open to conversations on that. Again, that would be, we would certainly entertain a proposal along those lines and would be negotiable.
Will there be public-private grant opportunities to improve railroad infrastructure that VCTC will assist in applying for?
The short answer is yes, I think that there are opportunities there. I think the nature of, at least in California, and I believe at the national level as well, at the federal level, in most cases, a substantial private match is required for short line related infrastructure grant programs. Where VCTC can play a role as a public entity, be a participant in an application. But I would not expect that we at VCTC don't have revenue streams to support that kind of operation. because the revenues that we have are for public transit. And the commission has concluded that through the end, while we are currently having to use public transit funds to support maintenance of the railway, that will not continue. And so, and we don't have another revenue stream other than the relatively small amount of lease revenues that we get on an annual basis. Those theoretically could be teed up as part of a match. So again, that would be something that would be negotiable. And again, what's really important in all of this is that the communities, the cities of Santa Paula and Fillmore and the county of Ventura would like to see this rail line continue to grow and expand from an economic development and tourism perspective. And so there may be opportunities in working with the cities and the county to have them participate in the program as well.
Will VCTC follow FRA guidelines on rails to trails?
Most certainly, definitely. The short answer is absolutely. We have done so to this point, and we would only continue to do so. Again, for everybody's edification, the current rails to trails activities are only in the currently in the two cities and the one unincorporated community, sort of urban area where the trails have not been built is through the more active farmland area. And we would definitely be following all of the rules of the FRA and the California Public Utilities Commission.
Are there any restrictions on the type of freight service and rail car storage on the branch line?
No, there are no restrictions. Well, the only restrictions I would say if there would be that if there are certain types of freight that's being carried that does have its own rules, that may be the case of FRA, sort of say handling something toxic, or that when anytime a railroad would operate, they would have to have all the necessary certifications to allow them to haul it. But we do not have any restrictions.
Will the option 2 mile post be posted? Current option 2 does not show the mile posts. I think that's referring to in the RFP, the second option.
We will make sure that the mile posts are posted. I think I understand that question. That'll be the mile post that goes from, generally speaking, Montalvo in East Ventura to Santa Paula, where the current freight customer is located. So we can make that available. I thought we had identified that, but if we did not, that's an oversight on our part.
I do believe it's listed in a different section of the RFP in the introductory remarks, but we will certainly post a more specific answer to that. Would the VCTC assist the operator in working with Union Pacific Railroad in allowing the operator to provide the freight service to the one existing customer?
Yes, we are on record to support any rail operator who's able to develop an interchange agreement with Union Pacific.
Would VCTC allow the construction of additional track along the right-of-way?
Yes, I don't think we're going to, I think it's a negotiable conversation. I guess it would be the intent of understanding what the purpose of the track would be for. But we have, that is somewhat complicated given the number of private crossings that we have. But we would be, we would certainly work to try to make sure that we want the rail line to be successful. If a case can be made that a second track will allow that to happen, we would want to support that. Again, we have had some interest in the past of effectively creating a long siding on the Santa Paula branch line. The intent at the time was to was potentially to look at doing some oil tank car transition to pipeline. That it becomes a sticky wicket, quite frankly. And so I can't say unequivocally yes. It's going to really be dependent upon why the other track would be necessary. So that would be something I would encourage be included in the technical plan and an explanation as to why that might be the case.
Would the VCTC assist the operator in working with the various economic development groups to bring new business to the railroad?
Yes, I mean we have done that in the past. We have worked with economic development groups, real estate, the real estate industry, who have wanted to locate businesses, and in fact, that's how the current customer, their site had gone unserved. There was not a customer for several years, and this new customer came in and is now has occupied this space. And I can't say that we would be out there leading it on an advocacy side, but we were very open to saying how can we support the Santa Clara River Valley and their economic development. We don't want to be something where that's not our problem. That's not going to be our approach.
And I would add, from a sort of day-to-day operations perspective, we work really hard to quickly turn around requests for rights of entry or permitting or access to the line as needed for everything from pumpkin patches to movie shoots. So we do try really hard to be responsive. Does VCTC have any additional land available to construct repair facilities and storage buildings along the right-of-way?
We have relatively limited excess land. Not to say that we don't have some, but there aren't many places. And again, we can provide right-of-way maps so you can see where we can make sure that is posted. Amanda, we have all that, correct? The right-of-way
Yes.
maps, parcels. So you'd be able to identify where there would be right-of-way, but we do not have much more than the existing 100-foot wide right-of-way, with the exception of a few places where we have. In Santa Paula, the right-of-way is a little wider. There are a couple of other places that do, as well as in Fillmore.
Is the operating agreement with Union Pacific available for review?
Yes, it is, and it is an exhibit on our website. So if you scroll through our website where you found the RFP, it is identified there.
If the contract is granted to only option 2 of the RFP, will the maintenance performance bond only be needed for that segment and not the entire Santa Paula branch line?
I think the short answer to that is probably yes. I would say it's also negotiable, but what we're most concerned about is that currently VCTC does have this obligation to maintain the track to Santa Paula, so that milepost marker from Montalvo to Santa Paula, we would want to make sure that that could continue. So my sense is that we would only need it for that segment.
Will VCTC provide a list of participants to this meeting?
Yes, we will make sure that the list is available. This was a, we want to make sure that there's awareness of, in the interest of transparency, of all potential proposers. So we will make that list available as another attachment. We can, what we will likely do is just circulate that to those that proposed. I don't know that there's a need for us to post it on our website, but to make sure that all of those of you that are on this on this Zoom are aware of the other participants.
So all of the questions in our question and answer box have been answered. Again, I'll give participants an opportunity to answer or to ask questions in the Q&A box, or certainly you're welcome to raise your hand and we'll answer them live. In previous VCTC meetings, there was an estimated $1.25+ million in needed repairs for current bridge repairs. Will VCTC assist in any current repairs needed prior to a new operator taking control?
No, there will not be. Again, going back to my comment from an earlier question, the funding that we have is public transit dollars. And so this operation will not be a public transit operation. And so it's, again, my very clear direction, abundantly clear direction from my commission is that public dollars won't be used for those types of repairs to the existing infrastructure.
Okay, we again have no open questions, so I'll give you, oh, there's one more. Does VCTC have agreements with Metrolink at Montalvo for use of any Metrolink trackage?
So it's a very good question. VCTC is a member agency of the Southern California Regional Rail Authority, otherwise known as Metrolink. We have we can provide the nature of our agreements with SCRRA so that's clear. But the nature of the operation is we have a very clear milepost cutoff point where Metrolink maintains the existing station in East Ventura, but also a very short segment up the Santa Paula branch line to allow for Metrolink operations. We can provide that agreement, but it's a relatively short segment that we can show where Metrolink does maintain. And I think we tried to provide that in the RFP as well. Tom and I spent some time working on trying to get that identified. So I think we have that already, and we can, but if we need the history of that goes back to early 2000s, so we'll have to track down the agreements that were in place that show the sort of the division of labor.
Okay, again, we've reached the end of our written questions. I'll give one last opportunity to ask any questions or to raise your hand, and I'm certainly happy to allow you to talk here on the webinar if you'd like to ask something live.
Well, we're not seeing any, Amanda, and
Sure.
I really want to thank those of you that have participated in this. This is a unique, very unique opportunity, and we hope that there is. See, if I talk long enough, we're going to get a question. So I don't know, is it a question, or is it just saying, "Great job, VCTC, wonderful job"?
The question that's come in says, you stated that VCTC will maintain the right-of-way outside of the 15 feet from center line of the track and will be in compliance with FRA and CPUC requirements. And I guess maybe they're asking for confirmation there. And the answer is yes, that's correct. We do actively maintain the right-of-way outside of the tracks. We have contracts and agreements in place with weed abatement contractors, with arborists and others to maintain the area outside of the operating right-of-way. And Darren, I don't know if you'd like to add anything to that.
Nope, that covered it.
That's 15 feet on each side of each track.
Thank you, Tom. Yes, so 30 feet of width in total.
The next question that's come in is, if there is a legal issue pertaining to the right-of-way, is VCTC responsible for the legal fees and protection of railroad rights for the operator?
That is negotiable, but under our current arrangements right now, the current operator defends and indemnifies along the most of the track that they operate on.
So I'll just go over a few RFP scheduling and upcoming deadlines just by way of a reminder, and then we can answer any additional questions that come in. So any additional questions beyond today's must be submitted in writing by email to Darren Kettle at dkettle, that's DKETTLE at goventura.org. It's also listed in the request for proposals. And those need to be submitted no later than 5 p.m. Pacific time on November 4th, 2020. VCTC will post a response to questions on our website no later than November 18th. Proposals are due by 5 p.m. Pacific on December 18th, 2020. We will not accept any electronic or faxed proposals, and late proposals will also not be accepted. So please do plan your submittal accordingly. And the request for proposals includes additional information regarding proposal submittal. We did have one question that came in while I was going over the final reminders. Will VCTC assist the operator in disputes with landowners and water districts and debris flows?
Well, we're not going to have any of those things come up. You know, we want to be good partners, and we have in the past when we've had flood issues, we've worked with our public agency partners to try to identify win-win solutions. I think it's gonna be situational, case by case, but again, we're hoping that, you know, in a true spirit of partnership, we will be able to work with an operator that is on the line to try to resolve issues as they come up. I can't say that we'll do all of them, but we've generally come up with good solutions in the past, and I would hope that we would be able to do that with any future operation.
We've had two questions come in regarding homeless encampments. So the first is, how do you propose to handle homeless encampments along the Santa Paula branch line? And the second question, related, similar question, will VCTC address the homeless situation outside of the 15 feet?
Great question. So there is, there's a two-part answer. Under the guidelines from the Center for Disease Control, generally speaking, and just in California, we are under guidance to not relocate homeless encampments currently in a railroad right-of-way. I am so hopeful, as I'm sure many of you are, that we are not operating in this kind of COVID environment for much longer. We do have a legal opinion from VCTC's general counsel that recognizing our role as an owner of an active railroad, that in the interest of safety, we can remove homeless encampments once we are out of the COVID world. We will be working with the communities where the homeless encampments are located and be able to relocate those encampments. There's an approach that under California law is now allowed. We are actually following case law that came out of a situation with BART, the Bay Area Rapid Transit District, and we're utilizing that case law as for our legal opinion. It will allow us to remove homeless encampments in the interest of public safety on a railroad corridor.
I would also add that even in the COVID environment, we are working with our weed abatement contractors and are arborist to minimize the impact of any encampments along the line. We also coordinate with the cities along the way, particularly the city of Santa Paula and the county's watershed protection district to plan for and mitigate any impacts of encampments along the way. So we do try our best to try to mitigate that. And another question that's come in, are there any other lease agreements that need to be negotiated with either Santa Paula or Fillmore to operate on the branch line, presumably the cities of Santa Paula and Fillmore?
No, we are the owner of the branch line. The lease would be with us there, where a proposer may have to have other negotiations for property would be if there's going to be a different location where there's going to be a yard, there's going to be a depot for excursion trains, those types of things. Again, there's currently that is available in Fillmore, but that is also under lease control with the Fillmore and Western. So that would be it, but not for the operations of the rail line itself.
Okay, do we have any last minute questions coming in? We're right at an hour, so we do have time for any additional questions, either to answer through the Q&A box, or if you'd like to raise your hand, I'd be happy to give you the floor.
So, and if not, again, I want to say thank you for participating. We are excited about this opportunity for putting this out there. We do hope that we get some really top quality proposals. As it relates to, as Amanda said, we will be continuing to take questions all the way up to November 4th. Am I remembering it right, I think?
That's correct.
And if not here, then we will we'll move on. We'll let you go back about your day, and I just thank you again for your participation. And again, I strongly encourage those that have interest to come out and see the corridor, see where it fits in Southern California, and see how what true potential is out there for the Santa Paula branch line. And so with that, Amanda, I'm going to ask that you go ahead and close down the webinar, and again thank all the attendees for your participation. And if we could leave you and Tom Egan and myself, that would be awesome. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you all.